At the start of the year, I was really hopeful that 2026 was going to be a better year than 2025. 2025 was also hopeful at the start, but it just kind of felt like things never really got started. 2026 showed early signs of life, but once we got to April, and definitely once we're now looking at the May numbers, I think I can say with confidence that 2026 is actually worse off than 2025 in most of the ways that matter. I'm talking things like sales volume, days on market, and particularly the amount of inventory that's left sitting on the market at the end of the month. Today, we're going to take a look at the market in general to start, and then we're going to focus in on the single family properties. Let's take a look. Now, jumping into the first stat, we can see that for May of 2026, we're actually well under the red dashed line, which is the 10-year average for number of sales overall in the general market. We're down about 200 or a little less than 200 from last year. We're down about 10 from 2024. And if we actually look back at the entire 10 years for Mays for number of sales, other than 2020, which was obviously extremely slow because we were still coming to grips with the early part of COVID, this is actually the slowest May that we have on record in the last 10 years for just straight up sales volume. Now, it varies per type of property. For condos, it's a lot more dire than for single family homes, which we'll get into, but definitely a relatively slow May overall. This is the same data, just kind of compared to the previous 2 years for each month. And you could see the reason for my optimism in January, February, because we saw a little bit lower in January 2026 compared to 25. They were pretty much at par in February, kind of a little bit lower again in March, but then the gap opened up in April and really opened up here in May. When things actually really came to life in 2025, that just didn't happen this year. In 2026, we're well below that 2025 number and even below the 2024 number. So this is the quietest in the last 3 years. So hopefully that picks up in June. Anecdotally, it does seem like things are starting to get a little bit busier, at least in my little corner of the real estate market for my clients. But there's no guarantee that that's what's going on in the market at large. We'll have to wait for the stats for next month to confirm that. And this is another really concerning number. So the number of active listings, the number of listings sitting on the market at the end of the month. This is all of the Mays, again, for the last 10 years. And we can see the trend is going up. We're almost at that record 2017 number. We're not quite there yet, but we are sitting at more listings than in May of 2018. And we can see this has just been building up over the last few years. We had record lows in 2020, 21, and 22. We saw a jump from 23 to 24, quite a significant jump. And then it's just continued to deteriorate from there. So again, it's not an even split. We're seeing more inventory in particularly the condo sections of the market, both townhouse and apartment condos. But overall, that amount of inventory sitting on the market at the end of each month, even in the parts of the market that are doing well, you have to work a little bit harder to stand out. You got to make sure your marketing is more on point, and you got to make sure you're priced a little more aggressively, sometimes even a little bit lower than the recent comparables, to make sure that you're one of those, you're the best of the 5 or 10 comparable listings in your area, depending on what part of the city you're in, to make sure that you get that offer in the first few weeks. Now, months of inventory, we're looking at the 12-month trend here. We can see it's been pretty flat for most of the year. We're sitting at 3.3 months of inventory, which under 4 months of inventory. So we are technically in seller's market territory, but that varies widely per type of property. We're definitely going to be in seller's market territory for single detached. Townhomes, we're going to be probably in that territory as well, but we're definitely more than likely going to be in balanced and buyer's market territory for the apartment condo type situation. But compared to last year, you can see even compared to June, we're up for months of inventory, and May, if I remember correctly, was even lower than June. So we're trending upwards in that way as well. Means more inventory is sitting on the market a little bit longer. Things are selling a little bit slower. The average days on market, obviously another good one to look at. You can see month over month, we're down. We went from 35 days to 31. So that's good news, but also kind of expected. We expect to see that trend kind of March, April, May. We expect the average days on market to go down because there's more activity. We're in the kind of peak spring market. So not a huge news there, but it is good to see that number at least is going down. It would be really concerning if it were climbing month over month. But we can see we're actually up almost 20% year over year. So last May, we were sitting at 26.6 for the average days on market. We're now at 31.7. in May of 2026. Zooming into the single family numbers now, I'm going to do a separate video as usual, zooming into the townhouse properties and the condo market. So this will be useful for you if you're interested in what's going on in single families. If you want to know what's going on specifically with townhouses and specifically with condos, make sure you get subscribed to the channel so you get notified when those videos come out and you can stay up to date on what's going on because things are moving fairly quickly. Getting into the May numbers for sales volume for detached, we can see we're still below that 10-year average, but it's not like the lowest one that we've seen in the last 10 years. Obviously, 2020 again was quite low for single families, but 2022, 23, and 24, we actually saw more sales volume this year for single family in 2026 than we did in 2022, which was actually kind of surprising to me when I looked at it, but you think about when things happened. In 2021, we had that record year where the whole time it was just crazy. 2022, the rates started to go up in March/April. So by May, we were actually really falling. We saw a real dip in the market in 2022, and that's why this is down to 697. So if you're looking back to the March or April numbers, you might be surprised because the 2022 numbers were like as high or higher than the 2021 numbers. That just wasn't the case in 2022. Things were starting to slow down with those rate increases. And looking at the same data here, we can see the trend did kind of continue. So again, I was optimistic, especially in March when we crept above the 2025 number for single family sales, but we quickly fell kind of below that benchmark again. And now in May, we're again well below that 2025 number, but above the 2024 number. So already starting to see that variability between what the single family market is doing and what the other sections of the market, how they're performing. Looking at the number of active listings, so for single family homes, it's a little more encouraging. We've definitely still seen that trend coming up since 2021, but we can see we're almost at parity between 2025 and 2026. So the amount of inventory for single families that's sitting on the market at the end of the month is a little bit higher, but it's almost the same as it was last year. So it'll be interesting to see as we go forward if that trend starts to reverse at all. But at the very least, the bleeding has kind of stopped compared to the other sections of the market. Months of inventory, as expected, so 3.33 months of inventory was what we had for the market in general, being dragged up by the other two sectors of the market, particularly anything with a condo fee. For single family homes, we're sitting at 2.67 months of inventory, which is well comfortably into seller's market territory. Doesn't mean every single family market that hits the single family property that hits the market is going to go right away, but it does mean they're going to go a lot faster, and you're in pretty good shape if you are priced well and you present well. Looking here at the days on market again, we saw an increase from last year, so 10%. We're up from 23 days in May 2025 to 25 days in May of 2026. So a bit of an increase there, but not as severe as the almost 20% that we saw for the market at large. And we did see a nice 16.1% decrease month over month, which again is what we expect to see, but on a percentage basis, that's a stronger decrease than what we saw for the market in general. So single families are really showing to be the most resilient section of the market right now. Freeholds in general are doing well, but detached homes specifically are doing okay. The benchmark price, always one of the most important things to look at here. And we can see that from a month over month perspective, we're actually climbing. We're up just about 1% month over month. And this is benchmark price, not average price. So it does control for the outliers. So this is a fairly reliable price number. And encouragingly enough, we're up a very modest amount, but 0.3% year over year. We had a 721,300 average price back in May of 2025. And we're now up to 723,800, which is encouraging to see from a price perspective. So more inventory, or slightly more inventory sitting on the market, but a lower months of inventory. Things are selling relatively fast compared to the rest of the market with the detached. And the prices are holding steady as well, which is really encouraging if you're somebody who's considering selling a detached home. So overall, not a terrible picture looking at the detached market specifically, but you can probably guess from the difference between the general market and the detached market that the other two sections are going to be a little bit uglier. The townhouse one's probably not going to be as bad depending on what you're looking at. If you're looking at a freehold property versus a something with a condo fee or something that's a little bit smaller. The 3-bedroom townhouse condos seem to be performing a little bit better too. They work for kind of the family lifestyle. But for the condo market, we're continuing to see softness. We'll drill into that in the coming weeks. I should have the townhouse one out next week, maybe the condo one as well, if not the following week for sure, if that's a section of the market you're interested in. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch. Get subscribed if you found this useful, or even throw a like so this video gets in front of more people just like yourself who it can help. Thanks again. Have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.